So while Mark Carney, our prime minister, is out flipping pancakes in a full suit, he's taking some friendly fire from a liberal stalwart, Lloyd Axworthy. And why is that? Well, we'll find out. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me is Warren Kinsella. All right, another liberal stalwart, Warren Kinsella. I kind of jokingly talk about Mark Carney flipping pancakes in a full suit. We're showing an image of it here. And I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. It's very he's a banker, and I guess that's the way he rolls, and that's fine. It just it's an interesting choice, but he's always trying to portray, the seriousness of the job, the importance of the work that he's doing, and that's I get that, but he's taking some friendly fire from former Liberal MP Lloyd Axworthy, of course, who kept the Liberal Party of Canada alive and well and gave it oxygen in the West for many years when the party was decimated. But Warren, what is Axworthy taking issue with Carney?
Well, he really took issue with him. He called him a
Yeah.
bootlicker, and suggested that Mark Carney was a coward. So it came out after on a blog post that Axworthy did after Carney scuttled late that Sunday night the digital service tax that the Trudeau guys cooked up about a year ago. Donald Trump objected to it. Joe Biden had objected to it too. So it was like successive US presidents saying,
Hmm.
we don't like this, it's not fair. And Carney just got rid of it summarily. It had been passed by the House of Commons, but he got rid of this tax. And that's what prompted Lloyd Axworthy to come out and say what he said. And you and I both know, as Westerners, Lloyd Axworthy really did keep the Liberal Party of Canada alive during some very dark times for the Liberal Party. He was the only elected member west of the Lakehead for years.
That's right.
So for him to say what he said, even though he's 85 years old, for him to say what he said, that's a big deal. A lot of Liberals are talking about it and saying, wow, I wonder what this means.
Yeah, I don't know if it's fair, but with going to the backstory on all of this, President Trump had said this digital services tax is a no go. It's not going to work, and then the trade was shut off. They cut off trade negotiations because of it. Carney knew this. Warren, that Carney was aware, not only because former President Biden's government was also concerned about it, but industries in Canada, consumers groups in Canada, everyone's been saying this to the Trudeau guys, even this is not good. So Carney sort of made his own trip up in that he just decided to go ahead with it.
Last night I had a good conversation with President Trump, and we agreed to recommence our negotiations.
And then has a phone call with the president on a Saturday night, and then by Sunday, the finance minister is announcing no digital services tax. So just purely from the political aspect of it, I mean, is it as abhorrent as Axworthy is making it out to be, or was this just reasonable negotiating to do after the call the president and the prime minister had? Like, what do you think about that?
That is the key question. I mean, I was very critical of it. You were, our
Hmm.
colleague Brian Lilly,
Yeah.
editorially, we'd been against it for the reason that the platforms, whether it was, TikTok or Meta or what have you, was just going to pass along the cost of it to those of us who use those platforms. Secondly, it was going to create a bureaucracy that we don't need more of and lots of red tape. So it was just a bad idea. And the
Yeah.
Americans saw it, I think, properly as a tax grab at their expense and unfair. So, should Carney have seen it coming? Absolutely. I mean, the Americans have been complaining about it, as you point out, for quite
Hmm.
some time. What got Axworthy back into the game, and he's been pretty respectful of different liberal leaders since he left politics, is the fact that it looked like Mark Carney was just doing whatever the boss, daddy, as somebody at NATO called him, Donald Trump wanted done. And that's why he called him a bootlicker. So it seemed to be less about the policy and more about the fact that, Carney just jumped up and said, ready, I ready. And,
Right.
getting back to the joke you and I were making before about him wearing a full suit to flip pancakes, as Westerners, we know you don't do that.
No.
It's just sometimes Mark doesn't seem to get this politics stuff.
Yeah.
The Americans had signaled they were coming on the digital tax for a long time, and he had to ditch it at the last moment. I've had some liberal kind of Carney fanatics saying to me, "Oh, Warren, you should have known he was just saving that up as a bargaining chip, and this was the plan all along." Maybe that's true, but I think the president has signaled very clearly he's coming next for supply management,
Yeah.
which has been a hot topic in this country among conservatives and Quebecers for a long, long time. And that one is going to be different. The digital tax was one that hadn't come into place yet. They were going to start collecting the revenue from it this week. But the supply management, that's something very different that could cause big trouble for Mark Carney.
Yeah, we had a name for the Trudeau fanatics. We called them Truanons. I guess we're going to have to come up with something for those that think Carney does no wrong. But I don't believe for a moment that that was going to be a bargaining chip.
No.
President Trump doesn't put this stuff out there. I mean, plenty to say about President Trump, but he doesn't put this stuff out there lightly. I mean, he obviously wanted a reaction. He got the reaction that he needed. And by the way, as you, for the record, the digital services tax was never a good idea. So it is good that it's gone in that sense. But just beyond that, though, it it lends to sort of to a broader challenge, I think, that Canadians should feel concerned about, and that is who is negotiating for Canada, who
Yep.
is at the table for Canada. I know that in the previous Trump administration, when Chrystia Freeland was leading our negotiations, everyone was cheering her on and rah rah, how you were standing up to the big orange mean man, and I, I don't know if Canada got the best deal, and I feel we're in the same boat. I don't. I mean, I see who's across the table for Trump and doing their negotiations. They're pretty good. They're smart. They're solid. I'm not saying that Canada's negotiators aren't all of those things. I just don't think that there's a steel spine, perhaps, that they're dealing with across the table. What's your thinking on that?
I think you're right. If you go back to the very first free trade agreement we had with the Americans, it was Simon Reisman, Heather Reisman's dad. You had Pat Carney, who was Minister of Trade, and other strong ministers of trade at the federal level. And, they were strong personalities. Reisman was
Yeah.
somebody you didn't mess around with. And we got a good deal for the country. The Mulroney government got a good deal. And my former boss, Prime Minister Chrétien, kept it and defended it because he felt it was good for the country. So, you're absolutely right. Not only do we not know who's at the table for us and if they've got that spine of steel, as you put it,
Hmm.
but we also don't know what their priorities are. Is it just to get a deal? Is it a deal that prevents the application of any tariffs in the future? Obviously, as a country, that's something that we all want, all provinces want, but we don't know what the objective is. My concern with this deal, that, by the way, Mark Carney had said at the end of March, our old relationship with the United States was over. And then we find out from Brian's reporting a few weeks later that they were having secret negotiations. My concern has always been, what's to prevent the president from tearing up that deal? Like
Hmm.
the one that's in place now, the USMCA, was one that he himself signed in his first term. So should we be devoting all this effort, all this time and energy and resources to a new deal when the president could just say, I don't like it, and I've decided I'm not going to abide by it? That to me is a real problem, and it makes me question what the Carney strategy is here.
And just to put a finer point on it, on the issue that you just brought up on sort of what's next in these big discussions. Obviously, of course, we have the auto sector that is ongoing, with the steel tariffs as well. But it's that supply management. Certainly, President Trump has telegraphed his concerns of what the Canadian government charges their dairy producers, particularly in Wisconsin, the taxes that go on. But Mark Carney knows you do not touch supply management no matter what. So was he willing to risk here to blow up a potential trade deal, take a hit domestically? What do you think the calculus is there?
Well, I think the president is coming. The president made very clear, the post that the president made that shut down the digital tax, he
Hmm.
also went after supply management. What is supply
Yeah.
management? It's basically to create a stable, managed marketplace for our farmers, for dairy, for eggs, for poultry, and it's been in place through successive governments. It's why Andrew Scheer won the leadership against Maxime Bernier. Bernier was against supply management.
That's right.
Scheer was for it, and Scheer won the leadership. And every successive conservative and liberal leader has protected supply management to the point where just last week, at the end of June, the House of Commons finally passed a bill that would basically tie Carney's hands and not allow him to use supply management as a bargaining chip. So that creates a big, big problem for him if, as I believe, the president is going to start coming after us on that. And, there's a lot of people in this country who agree that supply management does distort the marketplace. It's something that
Hmm.
we shouldn't be doing. But in the province of Quebec, where it is valued and considered very important, I think we're in for some big trouble if we get rid of it. A lot of Quebecers are going to rise up and be angry, and maybe even give a big boost to separatism.
Well, there are certainly a lot on the table and multiple issues at stake, but can the Carney government get a good deal for Canadians? Only time will tell. Well, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel and go to the torontosun.com. You'll find commentary and coverage there you will not find anywhere else.